Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is another Asian movie collection addendum video, and the usual countries are at play here. Now I think almost all the films that I'm showing you tonight, I have reviewed on this channel before, with the exception of one. I know of one title that I have not yet reviewed, and I hope to rectify that situation in the near future. So let's start rolling through them here, alright? Now, the first Blu-ray set that I have is a very nice release from Eureka, and it is a Region B release, multiple Blu-ray set of the Angela Mao collection. Yes, Hapkido and Lady Whirlwind. Now, these are action flicks, martial arts flicks. In Hapkido, a group of martial artists, played by Angela Mao, Sammo Hung, and Carter Wong, start their own school to teach the Korean martial art Hapkido, but a rival Japanese academy attempts to crush them, deeming Hapkido inferior to their Japanese fighting style. And I have a separate review of Hapkido on my channel, and when I did my review, I vaguely remember that I stated that this movie seemed to be ahead of its time. Because if you take the action, choreography, and fighting in this movie, Hapkido, and if you were to put it in a modern film, it would work. So that's a little bit different from some of the older school, martial arts flicks that maybe had a little bit more of like a robotic type of fighting style. Something like Master of the Flying Guillotine, which is a great movie. But, a little bit on the robotic side, right, with the movements. But Hapkido felt more fluid to me when I watched it. And, so it's like a really good quality martial art film. And it was released in the early 70s, okay? And then we have Lady Whirlwind on this, where it stars Angela Mao as a deadly fighter out for revenge on the man who wronged her sister. But after tracking the man down, she finds out he is on his own vengeful path against a gang of Japanese thugs. And it's been quite a while since I've seen Lady Whirlwind. I remember Hapkido being the superior film of the two, but when I rewatch both of these, and I hope to do that soon, I'll be able to come to a final determination of that. Based on one viewing each, Hapkido is a few levels above Lady Whirlwind. But I do look forward to watching both of these on Blu-ray and figuring out if that's still the case. Now, in terms of special features, you get feature-length audio commentary tracks with Asian film experts Frank Zhang and Michael Worth, as well as other people. A brand new interview by Angela Mao. Okay, more like featurettes, stuff like that. And that's for both films. So I've yet to see the commentaries on both films, and, Frank Zhang is great at doing that. So a very nice-looking release from Eureka, and I will review Lady Whirlwind at some point when I get to it. But, Hapkido, I know, is a must-watch. And, nowadays, people make a big deal out of women in lead roles in action flicks. Angela Mao was doing it back in the early 70s. Just saying. Then we have a big one. For me, personally. It's a Nagai Choi Lam film. And this is the director who gave us Ricky-O, The Story of Ricky, and stuff like that. And this is The Seventh Curse. Oh, yes. And The Seventh Curse ranks high on my favorite Nagai Choi Lam films. And if you've ever seen Story of Ricky, you know this director could get nuts. So, yeah, this movie's pretty freaking nuts. This is the 88 Films Region B release, by the way. And as you can tell by the thickness, it's a tricked out release. So you have Dr. Yun, played by Chin Soo-ho, who has been in a bunch of stuff, attempts to rescue a girl about to be sacrificed by the Worm Tribe in the middle of the jungle in Thailand. but he is damned with 7 blood curses and must return there to find a permanent cure. Though he finds a temporary antidote, this will only last a year, and he must return to the jungle to find a permanent cure. Oh yes. And this co-stars Dick Wei, Elvis Choi, Sybil Hu, Maggie Chung, and Chow Yun-fat even makes an appearance in this. Yes, and this movie is freaking nuts. It is nuts. And I saw this, I have watched this Blu-ray version, and the transfer is quite nice. And if you're like a fan of like old school crazy Hong Kong movies from the 80s, this is a must-watch. And the special features are pretty significant here. You get audio commentary by Frank Zheng and Mark Walco, supplementary audio commentary by Frank Zheng, and another commentary by Mike Leader and Arnie Venema, an interview with actor Chin Soo Ho, and some other stuff. Get a nice booklet here. Multiple booklets. The first booklet, oh my, I can't even show that. It's got like rampant nudity on the front. I'm glad I didn't show that one. But there's some articles in here. Spooky Counters, Holy Versions, and Seventh Curses by Matthew Edwards. Ni Kwang and the 7 Stars of the Seventh Curse by Matthew Edwards. And The Blood, the Bad, and the Ugly, Getting to Grips with Nagai Choi Lam's Bizarre Fantasy Horror by Andrew Graves. And this is a pretty significant book here. It's quite thick. And a lot of the stuff in here I can't even show. It's quite cool. And you get like a little poster here, which I'm not going to break out for you. But yeah, Seventh Curse. It's fun stuff, folks. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And unlike some other like Hong Kong stuff from the 80s, there's really nothing in this film that could offend anybody. There's no, I can't remember any like animal violence or anything in that, or, you know, there's a little bit of nudity in it, but it's nothing gratuitous. So I highly recommend that one. Alright, let's get to a few Korean titles here, both of which I reviewed fairly recently. And the first one is The Neighbors. Alright, The Neighbors. This is a fantastic cast. Check out my full-length review from a few weeks ago to get the total gist of this one. But the basic premise is, you know, you go into this apartment complex. There's a serial killer inside the complex, killing people. But no one knows, like, who it is. And to be perfectly honest, people just kind of mind their own business. And the lack of communication between the different neighbors is what allows this guy to continue operating without being caught. And that's all I'm going to tell you. This is the Region 3 Korean release with subtitles. So you can get this off of Yes Asia or DDD House. And this is like a really good flick. This was released in the early 2010s. I want to say 2012. You got Ma Dong-seok down there. The man. Kim Sae-ron is in this. So it's got a pretty fantastic cast. And it's a really nice, like, slow burn suspense thriller, if you want one. And this movie, like, goes under the radar. You don't hear people talk about this. And it's one of the better Korean thrillers that I've seen, I think. It's in the upper tier. Another Region 3 release with subtitles. And this is one that's completely under the radar. This is one no one talks about. And that is Young Gun in the Time, baby. That's right. You get like a private eye detective. And he tries to solve a murder case. And it has like an old school noirish feel that's also blended with like a modern day sensibility. Is how I would describe it. Alright. And, check out my review for more details. But this is a really neat, low-budget flick. Like, this was shot for, like, I forgot the budget, but it was in, like, the tens of thousands of dollars, this movie. Like, that's how low of a budget it was. And it's pretty sweet stuff. And you might even recognize one or two of the actors in this. Yeah, so pretty cool flick. And the fact that it's available now on Region 3 DVD with English subs is certainly worth a viewing. It's worth seeking out. Alright, a few Japanese titles here. Another film that I reviewed fairly recently. This is the Third Windows Region B Blu-ray release of Fish Story. And this is a film that even I myself have underrated unfairly. I remember watching this movie back in the day. I think this came out in the late 2000s, I think. I watched it like a decade or so ago. I thought it was good. Good quality flick. And then I rewatched it after I got the Blu-ray. And the last 5 minutes of this movie are like phenomenal. Like the ending of this movie, you want to talk about like finishing strong. Fish Story finishes strong. And it's basically about a group of characters who live between different time periods of time. Check out my review if you want more details. But like, one group lives in the 80s, one group lives in the 70s, one group lives in like the 2010s. And it jumps between these different stories. And overall, it's kind of like a story of how, music can influence people. There's an apocalyptic subplot to it. And it's just a really neat story. And everything just kind of comes together at the end. And it makes it like a really neat experience. It really does. It really does. And like if you've seen the recent Bill and Ted movie, like I'm a huge fan of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the original. And the recent movie tried to kind of wrap stuff up. And it didn't do that great of a job of it. It was like fine. But like if they took the script of this film and did a Bill and Ted 3 like reboot, it would be sweet. And that's all I'm going to say. You get a making of, cast and crew talk show, interviews, deleted scenes, etc. But this is like a film that, if you really like good script writing, watch this flick. It's good. Then we have Melancholic here. Now this is a film that I reviewed on this channel a few years ago. And I'm trying to wonder, do I have my notes up on this? This is like one of those dramatic thrillers. And this was released by Third Window Films again. And it is a Region B release, of course. And you basically have... Here's the plot. Despite having graduated from the prestigious Tokyo University, Kazuhiko is unemployed and living with his parents without any plans for the future. Everything changes, however, when he takes up a job at a local bathhouse and discovers that it is used by the Yakuza as a convenient place for executions and corpse disposal. Yes, so this is pretty interesting, like dramatic thriller. And from what I remember, very, very well-made movie, good character development, a story that flows organically, and it seems maybe a little predictable at the start, but there's an additional dynamic that emerges between some of the characters that makes it really interesting. Slightly, maybe a bit on the slow pace side, but if you want like a Japanese film that's been released in recent years that's kind of a nice dramatic thriller, Melancholic is a good choice here. You get behind the scenes, a short film, Q&A with the director and cast, and a trailer. So yes, if anybody's seen this one, let me know what you think. Check out my full-length review if you want more info on that. But I remember that one being pretty good. Better than pretty good, really. Alright, here's another oddball flick. And thankfully, I have been covering this director's films a little bit more recently. All right. This is a film that's directed by, what's his name? Hitoshi Matsumoto. And that is Big Man. Japan, baby. Yeah. I don't think a Blu-ray is available for this. This is the Magnet Region 1 DVD. Now, this movie is... It's a kaiju film. A giant monster movie that has, like, an Ultraman-like main character. And, you know, he's a normal dude, and he turns into a gigantic dude to fight monsters and protect the city. But this is more of like a comedy drama hybrid. So the dude's not exactly good at his job. The people in the city don't like him very much because he screws up quite a bit. And it's just kind of like this weird, interesting, fun little dramatic comedy about kind of a superhero who fights against kaiju, you know, evil monsters. But he's just not very good at his job. And he's kind of like annoyed by how people, you know, kind of treat him in public. So it has a really interesting dynamic to this, and I definitely recommend it. This director, Matsumoto, has directed some really bizarre movies. You know, stuff like R100, Symbol, Scabbard Samurai, really odd stuff. And I really like this director because he directs like weird comedies you're not going to see anywhere else. Alright, so special features, making of Big Man Japan, and some deleted scenes. So if you want something oddball, check out Big Man Japan. And then finally, we got Kiyoshi Kurosawa, another film I reviewed recently, the Tartan Asian Extreme release of Doppelganger. Oh yeah. And I mentioned this in my review, kind of false advertising. It looks like a horrific film, right? It looks horrific. It's Koji Yakusho screaming. You know, or actually, is that? I don't know who that is on the front cover. It doesn't look like Koji. Looks like a supporting actor, but regardless, Koji's on the back. This is not a horror film. Alright, it has a little bit of a sprinkling of horror element to it. Again, this is the director of Pulse, of Cure, Retribution. You would expect a horror film. It's not. This is more of a dramatic comedy. Alright? And I mentioned in my review that this is right up Kiyoshi's alley because he did do a bunch of dramatic comedies in the 90s that really have not received international distribution, or not much. And he does a good job at this. You basically have... This is a doppelganger story. Alright? You have like a researcher / scientist who's developing certain products, like a advanced wheelchair for the handicapped. And he comes across his doppelganger. A dude who looks exactly like him. And his doppelganger forces himself into his life and starts taking over his life. And does... Like, it's a really interesting dynamic. And it's actually quite humorous from a black comedy standpoint. And it's a pretty neat movie. This movie threw me off. First time I saw it, I didn't like it because I was expecting a horror movie, right? And I'm like, what is this? But as I watched it multiple times over the years, I actually quite enjoy this now. You get a trailer, TV spots, making of featurette, an interview with the director, Tartan Asia Extreme new releases, which aren't quite new anymore. But I always like seeing like the Tartan Asia Extreme trailers and stuff that they came out with back in the 2000s. Because this label was money about 15 years ago. It really was. And I really kind of miss it, you know. So it's always nice to pick up a Tartan Asia Extreme release. And this is available on DVD at a reasonable price if you're interested in it. So, yeah, pretty interesting selection of films tonight. And I will try to get a review of Lady Whirlwind up at some point in the future. But if you have any thoughts on the films that I've covered this evening, let me know. And as always, folks, I will see you next time.